What are you training for? Life. The story that this person in their head.
It's not about being perfect.
So radically different than my story. Welcome to Train for Life, a podcast brought to you by ISI Elite Training. I'm Adam Rice, founder and CEO, and will be hosting this alongside Amanda Hall, our COO. Tune in weekly as we explore topics on personal and professional development to help you level up in all aspects of your life. We call this Training for Life.
I'm excited to welcome our next guest to Train for Life podcast. He's a loyal member at ISI Dilworth, but also a good friend of mine and Adam's. A born and raised Charlottean who has toured the world with brands that scream and sing to being a nationally published bartender who is helping shape the era of modern cocktail culture. After 10 years of tour and standing behind the stick, fitness fell to the wayside until just over a year ago when he discovered ISI Elite and hasn't looked back. Welcome, Chad Whittington, to Train for Life.
What's up, guys? How's it going?
What's up, man?
Not a lot.
So I know a little bit about your story, but I'd like to kick it off so our audience can hear a little bit about you. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
I am about to turn 40 years old, and almost 40 years ago, I was born and raised in Huntersville, North Carolina. It's actually pretty funny if anyone knows of McCoy Road down in Huntersville.
I do.
Yeah. I'm actually a ninth generation McCoy. So my biological father, that was all his family side of the, stuff with all the land and everything. But my mom was like, this guy is not cool, so I'm going to remarry. And so that's where the Whittington comes in. And we then kind of staked our claim in Huntersville for a while, and then just decided that lake life was a little bit more of our style. So we moved up into Cornelius. And that's actually kind of like where a lot of my modern roots have really come from, just with all the people that I met between Huntersville, Cornelius, and Davidson that have kind of led me into this path of where I am today. Growing up, my grandmother was involved with a restaurant for a long time, and it was just something that I really saw her thriving in, and it just always kind of called to me. So I was like, oh, right when I can get a worker's permit, I'm going to get into the restaurant industry, which was a Lone Star as a hostess. Nice. and sweeping up all those peanuts off the ground. But I loved it.
Listen,
it was
don't knock the peanuts.
Yeah,
I
just
like the peanuts.
A lot of different people. And then once again, just having so many different types of friends, I ended up meeting a group of guys that were really into really, really heavy metal, which they call hardcore music. And it's more of a community than it is a style. And once again, it all stemmed from this early punk movement called straight edge, when a lot of the British punk bands were coming over from England and other parts of the world, and they were kind of bringing that whole sex and drugs and rock and roll with it. There was a really big band out of DC called Fugazi, and but before that there was a guy in a band that was called Minor Threat. And he had this song called I've Got the Straight Edge. And that's where this whole movement came from. And the music got heavier. And despite how heavy the music is, I always tell people to listen to the lyrics. It's actually super positive stuff. And so that's where I got kind of into that community. And so it was built off music. And that's where, music's always been a huge passion of mine. And so that's kind of what led me into, music while also being in the whole hospitality industry. So with that, every morning riding to school with my dad or my mom, it was listening to John Boy and Billy on WRFX Fox. So, a lot of classic rock, some newer, heavier stuff that was kind of coming out. And, I just always admired my dad so much. My dad was kind of this modern day Renaissance man. He could kind of do it all. He was the main cook in our family. So he was either on the grill or on the stove, kind of sauteing stuff and making all kinds of cool sauces and marinades and things like that. He was also the guy that if we ripped our jeans or our shirt, he was the guy that sewed it back together. All the music that I'm really into basically stemmed from my dad. My mom as well. So I don't want you to think that I'm not hyping up my mom. My mom's amazing. But I just speak about my dad a lot just because he is passed away. And as I get older, I remember more and more things about how I am today. Kind of dates back to that. But with that, my parents were super encouraging. They were kind of try everything to make sure you absolutely love it or absolutely don't, so you know that you don't have to do that again, right? And that came with sports, music, friends, any activity. It was like food, all that stuff. Like, don't say you're not going to do it, or don't say you're not going to try it until you actually do, just to make sure. So that's where I found out I hated baseball, hated golf, but loved basketball.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, loved basketball. From there, you know, that's kind of where I always like talk about the diversity of friends, right? Playing basketball in Huntersville, we played at the David B. Weimer Youth Center, which was in a very low income, predominantly black neighborhood. And here comes this guy who's like 6'4", looks just like Tom Selleck from Magnum PI, you know, like
course.
the whitest of white guys, big mustache, solid like structure, very like lean, fit, who was going to coach all these kids in basketball. And his energy just resonated so much that it was like, wow, this guy who probably you would look at and never think that he would be friends with all these type of people was that guy. So that's kind of where I was like, man, I can be friends with anybody, you know, because once again, growing up in Huntersville, you didn't have a huge diverse of,
Right.
you know, different diversities there. So I made it kind of a point to always be open to having those friends. Like one of my best friends that I'm still friends with today, his name's Andy Acosta, who lives up in New York. He grew up on my street, you know, the Cuban family that had just moved from Miami. Another one of my good friends that's actually involved with the ABC, his name's Willie. You know, this just like funny, kooky, like black guy that reminded me a lot of like Eddie Murphy. And then just, you know, my best friend still today, his name's Corey Howard, grew up in the neighborhood behind me. It was funny. We were just hiking the other day, doing like an 8-mile hike. And we were just kind of laughing about the one time that we like got in a tiff during basketball. It was like when he had just chipped his tooth playing basketball. I like smacked him with the ball because he like was kind of being a jerk.
Yeah.
And I chipped his tooth again. It like didn't even have time to heal. And
And you're still friends today.
still friends today. One of my best friends. But yeah, so after all the basketball and growing up with all these cool different friends, I was like, cool, let me get a restaurant job and kind of get into that. And that's kind of like where I was like, all right, restaurants like what I found that I like. After bagging groceries or working at the movie theater or doing all this other kind of stuff, I'm like, nah, restaurant industry is it, because one, it's the customer's always changing. Two, it's just very fast paced. You get to multitask. And then you almost like, especially with being a server into the bartender, you're like almost like putting on a show for people, right? Yeah. People can go eat anywhere. They can eat at home. They can go through all these like fast lane casual stuff. But when they choose to sit down with you, especially at a bar, that's where you really get to like thrive and put on a show. So once again, like I know I keep talking about my parents, but I still always say that like some of my parents' best friends that are still today, like the friends with my mom, they probably met at bars, sitting there just kind of talking and being like, oh, where are you from? And we just moved here, and we just, you know, and that, I mean, we all know that's what we do at a
So
bar,
true.
right? Just
Yeah.
as soon as you hear something. So that's kind of where I'm at today after my rambling of
So
how
tell
I
us a
grew
little
up.
bit about like your day to day today. So as you know, an influencer, a mixologist, you know, whether they find you behind the bar, like what does that day to day look like today? And I know we're going to dive in a little bit more into your
Yeah.
fitness journey, but what does your day to day look like today?
Yeah, I mean, so nowadays, you know, once again, like bartending is a huge passion of mine, and and as much as I've traveled around the world, as you know, right when I got out of high school, with being in that hardcore scene, I was like, I kind of want to like see this community around the country or even the world. So I got very blessed in kind of falling into a tour managing job with some of these bands. And once again, I think it had a lot to do with my energy of like always being so welcoming, always being so friendly, to where people were like, man, Chad's the guy that we need to like have on tour with us, because he's going to help like keep that positive energy going, like no matter what's going on. And trust me, the first tour I ever went on was the worst thing that could ever happen in my life. Like everything went wrong. The van blew up. The trailer got broken into. We all got super sick. Like we were borrowing money from anyone who could even give us $5 to make it to like anything. And then, so with that, traveling the world, seeing how different people eat and drink all around the world is really cool. So like coming back to Charlotte and being like, oh, this is what I grew up with, How can we change it? So that's kind of like what I set my mind on with bartending, is that when you sit down, you're not having a typical Charlotte bar experience. Now it's like, okay, I'm going to sit down, I'm going to order a drink, and you're going to say, I like Moscow Mules. And I'm like, all right, cool. I know the flavor profile of that. So why don't we take your drink that you love and elevate it to something a little bit different that you're going to love even more. And that's all you're going to be able to talk about once you leave the bar, is how I gave you a basic cocktail, elevated it just one step, and now that's all you can think about once you leave. You didn't even remember the restaurant you went to, really. You didn't even remember like why you even went out in the first place, but you remember that drink. And not even me, it's just the experience that you had. So day to day, that's kind of where I'm at. I walk into a bar, I kind of like set myself up for success, right? And I always talk about this, for anyone that wants to get into bartending, it's not just stepping behind a bar and immediately making drinks, right? We always have to prepare. So my day to day is like going into that bar even a little bit earlier than I need to, and kind of assessing, okay, what do I have prepped for the day? Okay, do I have this syrup? Do I have this juice? Do I have, all these mixers? Do I have the right amount of liquor? Do I have the right tools? Is everything clean? Cool. If not, then that's what I do from there, just to make sure I've got all that fresh herbs and, all the garnishes and stuff cut. And then of course I go and talk to the chef to see like, hey, are there any changes to anything? Are we bringing anything in new? Because people fail to forget that the kitchen with the chef flows into your cocktails, right? And we always want to focus on no waste. So if the chef is using something for a sauce or a marinade and he's throwing away like husks or skins or whatever, I can infuse that sometimes into making a syrup that can elevate a cocktail so many times. Or same thing if he's using like the stems of something for like a really earthy sauce, I could use the leaves of the fruits once again to make that. So once I kind of get all that set up, then it's kind of like the dinner and the show time, right? People start coming in, and once again, with me being heavily tattooed and a little bit of a beard, I always say guys kind of gravitate towards me a little bit more at the bar, because they're like, oh, I'm sure this guy knows how to make an old fashioned or a Manhattan. But then again, I love the women that come in who know me and go, oh, Chad knows how to make like this really refreshing, bubbly, herbaceous drink that's like low in sugar and that I can drink 3 of and not have to worry about drinking empty calories.
So you're like pouring into, your craft is so amazing. And I've been served by you, and like you it is an experience, right? Yeah. And it is a craft and it is an art. But even before, like, you bring this energy, even when you and I are alongside, even from, what is it that you always say at the beginning, or you're like, oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Like the whole room turns into, oh yeah, when we're taking a session together. Yep. So you bring so much energy from when you start that and thought behind your craft. But how do you start your day? I want you to talk just a little bit about that for a minute. Yeah. Like, how you start your day today on a day-to-day to like really put yourself, and I know you've shared this through your social and you share this with me, but like how you really start your day to bring that energy so that you're pouring into you so you can pour into others.
Yeah. I mean, with me being a little bit kind of prominent on social media, I used to start my day with immediately grabbing my phone and checking that. Like I just couldn't go 5 minutes without touching it, my phone, and seeing what had happened on Instagram overnight, that kind of thing. A lot of that shift is focus. Now it's like I wake up slowly, just take some deep breaths, definitely go get a glass of water. Moving through this fitness journey and moving through just getting myself healthier, I noticed that I was probably dehydrated more than half of the time.
Aren't we all?
And yeah. More than half the time is like even a generous statement. Yeah. It was probably 90% of the time. So yeah, I kind of just wake up slowly. Now with having a puppy, it's kind of like.
What's your puppy's name?
Her name is Fergie. I just adopted her from 2 girls, lots of dogs, rescue. She was posted on there, born into a litter of puppies that all had parvo. And was just kind of looking for a dog to start adventuring with all the hiking and everything else that I'm doing. And so now my morning involves a puppy as well. So of course I wake up and just kind of take a couple deep breaths and just kind of, assess. I always kind of like ask Google what the weather is that day because I'm about to walk outside with this dog to take her out to pee. And so is it raining? Is it cold? Is it hot? Is it muggy? That kind of thing. And then once I get back inside, it's just feed her and then kind of be like, okay, what time is it? Usually it's around 7 in the morning. So I'm like, all right, don't want to make an 8:30 workout or 9:30 workout. I still kind of stick with 9:30 most of the time. Of course, that's probably about to change with my schedule changing a little bit. So, it's just kind of walking around the house, kind of assessing like, what do I need to pick up? Did I fold clothes the night before? Did I lay out clothes that needed to be dried? I'm kind of very picky with my laundry. So laundry's always kind of in that mix of, stuff, because I don't like stuff laying around and getting funky. Once that, I kind of head to the gym, and, same thing. I, by that time, really haven't even touched my phone much other than to reply to a text or anything like that. I don't even assess like emails or anything until after I get back from the gym. And, of course, once I start heading to the gym, and I'm either eating a banana or an apple, and, kind of listening to some good music to kind of get me pepped up for that. Sometimes it's something kind of heavy and screamy. Sometimes it's kind of like something electronic, and,
I've listened. I know when we've had a couple sessions where they'll flip a Chad song on.
Yeah.
It's intense.
I would say 2 people love it, and the other the other 30 are like, oh my God, can you please turn this off? And I always tell people, once again, if you didn't have the lyrics, you would probably love the music. It's the lyrics of the screaming that people really can't stand. But I say, just listen to the lyrics. Like, just read through them one time, and you're kind of be like, oh, now this kind of makes sense. But yeah, after the gym, it's kind of like back home, protein shakes, some breakfast, hang out with the puppy, take a shower, and then head to work. So, I mean, that's the day in the life of Chad. Of course, with doing the social media stuff, if it's a day off, I kind of hit up my photographer and kind of see what content we can create with any campaigns that I have going on. Obviously, I've kind of put that stuff on the back burner over the last several months, stepping into a beverage director role for a restaurant group, and just found that like putting that in the background wasn't what I really wanted to do. I do want to kind of keep up with the social media stuff because, it's still a presence there that I love, and just love creating, And so when I'm not creating that stuff, I kind of get in this weird funk of like, oh, I'm just behind a bar every day. I'm just going to the gym every day. I'm just doing gym in the bar and gym in the bar, and not that my life is boring. It's just that if that's my day to day with just those 2 things, it kind of starts to feel lackluster. So the creation part of the content for social media, or even doing my own thing where I'm doing like cocktail classes or, bartending private events, it's just that little break from the norm that, I think we all need a lot. People think that we need it a little bit. I think we need it a lot.
Yeah.
I think once or twice a week, even just to break a little bit out of our patterns, especially if you're as ADD, I guess is the word to use for it, to where we just can't stay on one task all the time without being medicated, right? So break from the patterns are essential to my day to day.
It's awesome. So, I want to change pathways here and pivot a little bit, because you've gone through a substantial transformation. You joined ISI about a year ago, and I just love hearing this answer that, you said you're almost 40 years old. Yeah. You have obviously a lot of beliefs and habits and everything that led you to a place where you wanted to make a huge change in your life, right? And so you were overweight. So talk to us not only about, how much weight have you lost, your fitness journey, but also like what was the pivotal moment for you that says, I got to make a difference. Yeah. I got to change.
Once again, I mean, just, I was pushed into kind of an operations manager role with the restaurant group that I was with, between us opening a new location directly after a pandemic. I was probably working 60, 70 hours a week. I was in a relationship that had sometimes just felt really forced on both of our ends. And at the same time, like, fitness was a huge thing in her life, and it wasn't in mine, because my days off was just filled with like, I just want to chill. I don't want to be in anyone's face. I don't want people in my face, because that's all I've been doing. Because like I said, post-pandemic in the restaurant industry was a very tough time. Limited capacities, limited ingredients that could be brought in, limited staff was a huge thing. So it just took a really huge toll on me. And so just between the stress of that, the stress of a relationship ending, all of this, I saw a photo that was taken of me, at a pool, and I was like being, silly Chad, and I was putting on like these like baby goggles, and like when I was standing there holding those goggles, I saw like a small roll on my head, right? And I always kind of had this thing with like when people were overweight, and I was looking at them, I was like, well, at least I'm not the guy that has the rolls on his head, right? And
wow.
And I mean, and we could kind of laugh about
It's
it,
true, but we all have something,
right.
I think.
And we
like
kind of
that,
laugh about it, but it's like, wait, if you've got fat building up in areas that like is just skin and bone, then there's something that you need to address. And so when I saw that photo of myself, I was like, I don't know who this guy is. I don't know this version of myself. I'm angry all the time. I'm grumpy. I'm always tired. And nothing really seems to make me happy other than like, getting off work, going and grabbing that value size meal times 2 sometimes, and then going home and sitting in front of the TV and watching whatever mind-numbing show I could find until I just went to sleep. Right. So when I saw that photo posted and knew that like that's not the person that I know anymore, that's when I had heard about ISI through a coworker. And I noticed like just in the month that she had been going there, and of course this was at the Dilworth location where she was just doing outdoor workouts, I noticed that she like started looking better. So I was like, her name's Savannah Mack. Once again, a huge wave of energy every time she's in the gym. People just love working out with her. And I was like, so where are you working out? And she's like, oh, it's called ISI. It's literally right down the street, the Dilworth location. And I was like, oh, cool. I'm going to come check it out. I had checked out a couple of other gyms just to kind of see what they were about. I went into 9 Round. I went into Metabolic, of course, Planet Fitness, things like that. So ISI was on my list. Monday, March 8th of 2021 was my first session. Matt Longley, who was I think he was the head performance coach of Dilworth at the time. He was the guy that welcomed me in. And that first workout was dynamite. And it wasn't just him on the mic that was so energetic. It was the rest of the crowd. It was the high fives, the cheering on, the like, so stoked you're here, but not just for me, for everyone. It was like, hey, glad you showed up today. Because we know that when we wake up, we have so many choices of what we can do. And when I talk about the mental, for you to wake up and decide, I'm going to the gym, that's a huge thing. Because one, you already know it's going to take you 10 to 15 minutes to get there. It's an hour-long workout, give or take, with the warming up and the cool down, and then a 15 to 20-minute drive. So you're already looking at an hour and a half to 2 hours worth of your time cut out right there just going to the gym, right? Yep. So you're like, what do I need to do between going to the gym and getting back from the gym kind of thing that I could push aside or have to wait for? And from the moment I did the first class, I was like, this is what my body needed. I remember waking up the next day and like feeling sore, but not so sore I couldn't move. I kind of like craved it again, right? It's almost like getting tattooed, right? It sucks getting tattooed. It's not a good feeling. A needle's cutting into your skin, pushing ink at a high RPM, the sound's annoying, all this stuff. So
for context, this is a guy that's fully tattooed.
Yeah.
For anyone that is not watching on video.
Right.
Don't scare me. I think I may want a tattoo now.